Hi and welcome back to another video on Norse mythology. So the next few tales in this video are going to be all about Odin and his journey to and love of wisdom and knowledge. So we'll start with how he became one-eyed, and that's something that makes him easily distinguishable to us, especially in media or depictions in the text. So Odin represents wisdom, and that's because his quest for knowledge and wisdom are never-ending. So obtaining the meat of poetry, which we talked about in an earlier video, was one example of the lengths that he's willing to go to for this attainment of knowledge. But the story of how he became one-eyed is another. So the story starts when he traveled to Mimir's well, the Well of Erd, which is located in the roots of the Yggdrasil tree. Mimir, if you'll remember, is one of the most knowledgeable beings of the universe. He came in part by this from drinking the waters of the Well of Erd. And these waters instow the drinker with the knowledge of the cosmos. Also, as discussed earlier, he was beheaded after the Aesir and Vanir War, and Odin had his head embalmed and would spend years consulting him whenever he needed advice. After this, he was appointed guarder of the well. One day, Odin came to the well and asked Mimir to drink from it. But Mimir, knowing how powerful the waters were, refused unless Odin was to sacrifice one of his eyes. So with that, Odin went forward, gouged out an eye, and dropped it into the well. Then Mimir gave him a drink from the waters, and Odin was bestowed the knowledge of the cosmos. So one way this has been interpreted is the obvious way, is that no sacrifice is too great in your quest for wisdom. I mean, he literally gouged out his eye for one drink from the well in order to get a tiny bit of knowledge that this well containing the information of the cosmos could give him. But the lesser interpretation is due to the fact that it was his eye that he sacrificed, and the eye is the symbol of perception. So it can be surmised that he gave his eye for an enhanced sense of perception and a sense of lower self versus higher self. And that lower self versus higher self is something that we're going to see come into play in this next tale, which is his discovery of the runes. So this was another example in which Odin would go to extreme lengths in his search for wisdom and knowledge. So as we just talked about, the Yggdrasil contains the Well of Erd within its roots. The Well of Erd holds the power of the cosmos within its waters. It also holds the knowledge and powerful beings of the cosmos. One of those sets of beings are the Norns. The Norns are maidens who create the fate of every being in the cosmos. And the primary way they do this is by carving runes into the trunk of the Yggdrasil, and then it carries it out through the 9 worlds to make the fate happen. Stanza 20 in the poem Volupsa describes the power of the Norns like this. 3 wise women live there, by that well, under that tree. Earth is named one, another is Verthandi, the third is named Skuld. They carve men's fates, they determine destiny's laws, they choose the lifespan of every human child and how each life will end. So you can see just how powerful this magic can be and why Odin might want it. So what exactly are the runes? Well, runes are written letters used by the Norse and Germanic people prior to the Latin alphabet. These letters allow one to access, interact with, and influence that which they symbolize. Odin seeking the runes wasn't just a way to represent the spoken word, but it was also about harnessing the incredible magic that the Norns had. After watching the Norns using this incredible power, Odin knew he had to do anything to get it. As we're all familiar, the Well of Erd required a great sacrifice in order to pass along its knowledge. So this time he would have to do something incredible. Odin hung himself from a branch of the great Yggdrasil, stabbed himself with a tree, and he stared down into the depths of the well, willing the knowledge of the runes to come to him. And here he hung for 9 days and 9 nights. And he even made a point to tell the other gods not to interfere, as it could invalidate his sacrifice. After the passing of the 9 days and 9 nights, the shapes and secrets of the runes began to take shape in the waters of the well. So with the power of the runes, he became infinitely more powerful and could heal wounds, render enemy weapons useless, put out fires, protect his allies in battle, raise the dead, and even more than that. So as you can see, his sacrifice seems to be well worth it. So Odin's sacrifice is one that's mirrored throughout Norse mythology. It's a sacrifice of himself to himself, and nothing was seen as more noble than that. He was, in a sense, sacrificing his lower self to achieve his higher self. And that's something that we mentioned when he was visiting Mimir the first time to get his drink from the Well of Erd. So in Havamal, stanza 138, Odin is imparting his wisdom and has this to say in recognizing the sacrifice made. I know that I hung on a wind-battered tree 9 long nights, pierced by a spear and given to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree whose roots grow in a place no one has ever seen. So again, this is a testament within the tales that people are shown that almost nothing is too great a sacrifice for becoming the best version of yourself. And it isn't always easy, but it's always worth doing. If Odin himself can do it, then it's seen that the common Viking man or woman could do it themselves as well. Okay, so this last tale about Odin really ties in his 2 experiences thus far with obtaining his knowledge and wisdom. So this one I find particularly interesting because not only is he testing his wits, but the text that it comes from actually provides us with some information that we would have otherwise not known. So it starts when Odin tells Frigg, his wife, of this crazy plan to travel and challenge this apparently all-knowing giant to a contest of wits. So after some back and forth discussion, because Frigg is worried about him going down and challenging this giant, he takes off to the hall of the giant, Riddle-Weaver, and arrives calling himself Good Advisor. So once he gets there, the 2 take a load off and they start to challenge each other. Riddle-Weaver's questions start with the name of the horse who pulls the sun, the name of the horse who pulls the moon, the name of the river separating the lands of the gods and the giants, and the valley where Ragnarok will take place. So Odin answers all of these questions with detail, and then it becomes Riddle-Weaver's turn to answer Odin's challenges. Odin's questions are along the lines of who the first giant was, how the moon was created, how winter came to be, who the oldest being was, how Ymir had children, and how the Vanir came to live with the Aesir. So his questions were about humans, the sun, the sea, the winds, and even about how Odin dies. The final question Odin asks is, spoiler alert, what did Odin whisper in Baldur's ear before he placed him on the pyre? This is what finally stumped Riddle-Weaver, and his reply, which is stanzas 55 and 56 of the text, are this. No one knows what you said in those ancient days in your son's ears. I have spoken my aged wisdom. I have told you of Ragnarok. I have spoken with a doomed mouth. Now I know that I wagered my head against Odin in wisdom, but you, Odin, are forever the wisest of all. So with that, Odin had tested his wits and knowledge against what was thought to be the wisest giant of them all and came out victorious, thus proving that the sacrifices he had made for his wisdom and knowledge were at least worth it in that regard. So that's it for today, a glimpse into the world of Odin, and hopefully you learned a little something about him. And next time we're going to talk about 2 interesting tales, one about a kidnapping and one about an unhappy marriage. So I'll see you then.